Temptation. Chapter 2. The Terms of Want. Where the line blurs was about recognition. The terms of want is about choice. Nothing that follows is accidental. Dae-jun looked at the screen. His face betrayed him instantly, showing his annoyance. Seems like someone really needs to get hold of you. Wifey, he said. Oh yeah. Alexis scanned the room one final time to ensure she hadn't left anything behind. Her trash was put away. She walked over to Dae-jun and stood there, was maybe a foot of space between the two. Alexis tilted her head upwards to meet his eyes. She wanted him to know her sincerity, though it is not customary to stare into your Korean superior's face. The only way she felt she could communicate her sincerity was to allow her eyes to meet his. Dae-jun noticed her perfume. It was a fresh scent. He was sure he smelled jasmine, vanilla, something that reminded him of fresh air. She smelled like the start of a summer day. Dae-jun studied Alexis's face. Her hair, the way the ringlets fell around her cheeks. Her lips were delicate yet full, almost pouty. He could almost feel her breath. She was so close to him. All he could think was that she was standing too close to him. It made him uneasy. Her eyes, the redness in her cheeks. Ping. The sound broke them out of their stance. Alexis reached her hand to retrieve her phone from the director. He'd been holding it all the while. And when he finally extended his hand to return what was hers, Alexis inadvertently grabbed his fingers. She apologized and hoped she hadn't offended him. "I am sorry, sir." She looked away for a split second, but then there it was again. That look. Dae-jun noticed. "Have a good night, sir." And with that, Alexis left the office. She'd left John Dae-jun standing in the middle of the room dumbfounded, and she didn't even know it. Alexis was very late meeting Courtney. The two found seating at their old haunt, and before the waters were served, Alexis had already launched into the details of the night. How she felt overwhelmed by all of the dick pics. How was she supposed to decide solely based on that? Courtney listened and at times laughed. She knew her friend. She knew Alexis was very green, very overwhelmed. Courtney assured her that there was no rush. Together the two decided on a plan. 1. Alexis would get off the gay sites. They weren't meant for her. Although she had made some pretty cool connections and even made plans to meet up with a handful of guys for coffee or dinner. As it turned out, there was good chemistry, maybe the beginnings of new friendships. One guy was into anime and loved traveling to conventions. One guy liked horror. Oh yeah, he and Alexis chatted often about the cinematography of their favorites. She'd already made plans to meet up for hiking and another for the aquarium, and it went on like that for at least 6 other guys. 2. Courtney would cull through the notices to see if she could weed out the weird ones, the one-night stands, and the ones who want to see if he could find her pearl. 3. Alexis would turn off her notifications or at least silence them. "Rome wasn't built in a day," Courtney exclaimed. "Cut yourself some slack. Your George Michael's will come along before you know it. But in the meantime, you need to gain some dating experience. I think that's what we should work on next. That and your wardrobe, because I highly doubt you have any after-hours clothes in your closet. All you do is work." Alexis laughed. Courtney was right. Right about clothes. But what Alexis hadn't told Courtney about was her lingerie obsession. A year or so after she and Julian broke up, Alexis needed an outlet for her frustrations. She'd seen a gorgeous wine-red racerback teddy. The heart-shaped scallop design was everything. Since then, she purchased high-end baby doll sets, leather corset dresses, ribbon panties with the matching mesh bra. But it would be the recent chain cage panty set that sent Alexis down the dominatrix path. She tried the set and felt invincible, euphoric, and powerful. She looked amazing. She felt like she wanted to dominate, like she needed to be seen. Animal prints also brought out that side of Alexis. But the chain and satin or leather is what pushed her to the edge. She wanted to share that feeling with someone who wouldn't judge her. She felt very much like a woman, strong and fierce when she wore those things. It was late night when Dae-jun finally settled into bed. The expensive king-sized bed was befitting a person with such grand views of himself. His bedroom was a haven for Dae-jun. Seldom did he allow anyone in this space. There he could rest his mind and his body. He had a lot on his plate. Upcoming travel demands were mostly domestic for now. That aside, work was going well. The board was pleased, but they kept a vigilant watch on developments within Engine. His social network hummed along. There wasn't anyone on his radar that he needed to remember who and what Dae-jun was about. He had few close friends, and he liked it that way. His close friends were the people that kept him grounded. Mental note to self. Call Jasper, Alec, Manshik, and Soo-jin. Time for a night out. The boys loved hanging with Dae-jun. The endless flow of gorgeous women kept the men having a raucous time. They all worked hard and wanted to play even harder. Only a few of the guys were starting to talk about settling down. Manshik and Jasper often commented that the bachelor life was only as good until you've done it all, and then it becomes a chore. Or you become the villain in your own story. Dae-jun had often thought the saying was immature. He never gave it credence until this night, lying in bed staring at the stars through the custom-built skylight over his bed. On the rare night that the weather cooperated, the clouds parted long enough for him to appreciate the display. The thought occurred to Dae-jun that he just might be a villain in this new endeavor. He erased the idea as quickly as it sprang into mind. His cell vibrated. It was almost 2 a.m. He checked the display and immediately returned his phone to the nightstand. It was Victoria Cho, American-born to wealthy parents. She led a privileged life and behaved as such. Dae-jun mumbled under his breath that he didn't have time for her. Long ago there was a time when Dae-jun would have jumped at the first ring, but not today. Not ever again. The voicemail indicator pinged. Dae-jun knew it was from Victoria. He didn't care. He didn't bother to listen to it. He'd torture her some, make her beg him for his time, the way he used to beg for hers. Dae-jun eased the lighting down to its dimmest setting. His eyes were starting to feel heavy. Work crept back into his conscious. This time he thought about the presentation Alexis shared with him. He made a few mental notes about things to follow up with Alexis. He replayed her name again in his mind. Alexis, Alexius, Alexis. The message from wifey addressed her as Lexi. Dae-jun toyed with the sound of Lexi. Lexi, he repeated. A slight smile reached across one side of Dae-jun's face. Lexi. I can't wait to see you again. And just like that, Dae-jun fell asleep. The office buzzed with excitement for the upcoming weekend. Alexis was happy to start her dominatrix classes. It was super hard to find someone who openly admitted to participating in something so taboo, at least by Korean standards. If it weren't for the blog post linked to the dance studio's site, The Art of Female Domination. As the headline went on, Alexis couldn't believe her luck. The morning whizzed past, and after lunch a message from Executive Secretary Choi appeared. The team was asked to meet at 5:30 p.m. today. The director would like to review the other presentations and align the next steps. Alexis recalled the interaction with the director and felt comfortable that today's meeting would go smoothly. In addition, there would be less of the personal confessional that happened previously. She'd vowed to keep her personal life away from the office. She really didn't want to be a burden to the director or bring any stress to the team. The project meeting went well. Alexis was mindful to keep her phone silent. However, she'd left her phone face up. Dae-jun saw that male names were replacing the frequency of wifey, and notification numbers were still active and rising. He didn't know what to make of it. Who were these guys? He saw a message, "Can't wait to see you." Then just like that, the message disappeared. The phone's home screen reappeared. There was a picture of Alexis. She was posing in a mountainous scenic view. Her hair was let down and blown partially in her face. The day was bright. The sky was very blue. Her smile filled the photo. She looked happy. Daejun stared at the screen until it went black. Daejun hadn't kept an eye on the room. When he looked up from the phone's locked home screen, Alexis was looking at him. Daejun's face showed surprise. He needed to come up with an excuse, and just as he was about to say something, anything, Alexis saw the look on Daejun's face and interpreted his shock as disapproval. "I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to leave my phone out." She appeared mortified. Daejun needed to use this moment to bring up the topic. He quickly pivoted by dismissing Han Ji-ah and Park Ha-jun. The two looked at Alexis with empathetic eyes. The concern that Alexis could be reprimanded was evident on their faces. Alexis gave them a faint smile and a small wave of goodbye. This time, Daejun sat at his desk and gestured to Alexis to take the seat across from him. He leaned his back into the chair and cleared his throat. The two sat in silence for just a moment as Daejun pretended to be searching for the words needed to start the conversation. Clearing his throat a second time, "Alexis, I want to be as delicate as possible. I don't want to make things uncomfortable for you or for myself." He paused, seemingly searching for the most impactful verbiage for that moment. The silence was too much for Alexis. "Director Jian, please allow me to apologize. I know I've had a lot of phone traffic and I've been disruptive," she blurted out. "I really enjoy working on this project and with my teammates. I hope you reconsider taking me off the project. I promise to not allow my personal activities to interfere with work." It was a mouthful, and Alexis was able to say it all even before Daejun registered the turn of events. Alexis's outburst was just the opportunity Daejun needed. "Take you off the project?" Daejun said, feigning shock. No. Alexis, you produce amazing work. I think you are valuable to the team and the department as a whole." The words rolled off his lips with ease. He hadn't lied thus far, as he did see her as an asset to the company. Daejun leaned forward, now resting his forearms on the desktop. "I need to confess. To tell you something that I am not proud of." He looked away from her and inhaled deeply. So deep that there was almost no air left in the room. Alexis hung on his every word. "I don't know if you remember the time we shared an elevator several weeks ago?" He waited for her confirmation. "Yes," she said as she nodded. "Well," Daejun's slow exhale. "Gosh, how do I say this? Okay, here we go. One more hard inhale/exhale. I saw some of your text to your acquaintance. I didn't read everything that was texted between you and your friend." Daejun let out an expression that could be perceived as much-needed relief from having committed an act so egregious that he had no other choice but to lay bare his soul and apologize. Alexis felt overwhelmed with emotion. Director Jian always maintained staunch professionalism. He never appeared to allow anything to throw him off kilter. Seeing him like this made Alexis feel tremendous guilt. "He said he'd seen my texts." Alexis sat trying to recall what those were exactly. "I don't know what to say, sir. I don't even remember what those messages were," she affirmed, face still panic-stricken. "They were fairly personal. They had to do with dating." Daejun paused, mid-sentence, appearing to be uncomfortable, but he continued, "Something about George Michael and wanting to call someone." Daejun placing lots of emphasis on one daddy. There, he'd said it. He looked away from her as if he was embarrassed. The blood drained from Alexis's face. Her eyes were the size of $50 at this point. "Director?" she exclaimed. "I am so embarrassed." Her eyes fell to her lap. She sat staring at her hands. The room was silent for a moment. "Alexis, you did nothing wrong. Under the circumstances that night, it was practically unavoidable that something like that would happen. I cannot say that I wasn't surprised that you were in the situation." "No judgment, not at all." Daejun affirmed. "This is my problem," Alexis countered. "Obviously, I cannot unsee what I've seen. At the same time, I noticed that you're a little more busy these days with the phone. I didn't think it was my place to say anything. At the same time, I cannot help but worry about you. There it was. Dae-jun got the ball rolling. He was quite impressed with himself. He met Alexis with a warm smile. Worried about me, sir? Alexis raised her gaze to meet Dae-jun's. I'm okay, sir. Maybe worrying is too much. But given the subject matter, what you are trying to accomplish, I assume you are still on the path to finding what I'd call, and please forgive me, Alexis. If this conversation is in any way offending, you please let me know. We can stop now. Dae-jun exhaled. As I was saying, it seemed like you were trying to find a lover. Gah! He shook his head, as to imply he couldn't believe how ineloquent the conversation sounded. How he sounded. And it was working. He was disarming Alexis. Ms. Lane, we've talked a little about your dating experiences. You are just beginning. I see that you've been bombarded by so much noise. You shared the unsightly requests. Honestly, I haven't been able to not worry ever since you showed me the picture of the guy with the left turn situation. Dae-jun laughed a little, which disarmed Alexis, and she giggled as well. Alexis, how can I help? Alexis was taken by surprise, so much so that her knee-jerk response was one that she'd say to Courtney. If you know of anyone who can be my George Michael, I am all ears. Alexis smiled that shy little smile that showcased the dimple in the lower right corner near her mouth. Dae-jun admitted that he didn't understand the reference to George Michael, so Alexis showed him the lyrics to Father Figure. She confessed that there was something captivating about the idea of a man professing patience and a willingness to take responsibility his and his partner's love. He would be the teacher, preacher, and protector, never taking advantage or making her feel worthless. The words escaped her heart and mouth before she could censor herself, as she thought about Julian and Aubrey's real but not real relationship. Alexis found the lyrics on her phone and shared them with Dae-jun, but he didn't read them in that moment. He had to close the deal with Alexis. I do have friends who are interested in settling down. Are you thinking about marriage? He asked. Oh no, Alexis replied. I don't want that just yet. I have a lot to learn. I want to be a proficient lover and partner to my husband someday in the not-too-distant future. She giggled a little. And right now? Dae-jun asked, unsure exactly what her director was asking. What do you mean, director, sir? Is that why you're on dating sites? Not just for a one-night arrangement, but maybe a long-term situation? The question made Alexis think long and hard. I think I'd be okay with a situationship. It's okay to start with short-term, low-commitment options. The fewer expectations, the less you'll be let down, Alexis declared. Right! Of course, this was more of a rhetorical question. She didn't expect Dae-jun to answer. She thought about her brief relationship with Julian. She had so many expectations for their relationship, and in the end, she was let down and disappointed. Alexis smiled at Dae-jun, hiding behind that smile. It was one of the few superpowers she truly understood she had. If it's okay with you, I'd like to make a proposal, Dae-jun said, looking as forthright as possible. What if, instead of using all those apps and trying to meet strangers, I stood in the gap for you? He gave his warmest, most sincere look. Alexis's jaw dropped in disbelief. Excuse me? Director Jun, how could I ask you to do something like that? Ms. Lane, now that you've explained everything to me, I truly empathize. I think I understand, Dae-jun offered with sincerity. But you're the director, sir. Dae-jun was ready for Alexis's logical protest. Any sane person would question the appropriateness of his proposal, but Dae-jun was prepared for that as well. Consider this. Titles aside, if and only if you agree. We know this is not a love connection, couples therapy, or a desire for marriage. Everything is mutual. I think having a list of deal breakers is a good idea. That way, we'll learn what irritates the other person and avoid unnecessary conflict. Alexis listened intently. I recognize that what I am saying is likely a shock. I can see how distressed you are about my proposal. How about we table the conversation for another day? Daejun suggested. There's no rush, no harm in writing a pros and cons list. Daejun smiled, and Alexis smiled in return. How about this? Let's meet again in 2 days. Come with your pros and cons, a list of red flags or deal breakers, and I will do the same. Let's see where we go from there. Alexis didn't protest. The pair ended their meeting and went home. 2 days later, Daejun and Alexis met in the director's office. Alexis felt surprisingly calm, having decided to accept the director's offer despite her inner doubts. She resolved not to reveal the identity of her new suitor to Courtney, only that she had found someone. As the last of the staff left for the night, Alexis waited to be called into Daejun's office by Executive Secretary Choi. Gathering her project materials, she floated to the elevator. When the doors opened, the aroma of food greeted her. Alexis knocked lightly on the suite's door and was about to knock again when Daejun appeared, dressed casually instead of his usual tailored suits. "Ms. Lane, good to see you," he said, stepping aside to let her in. Alexis stood, waiting to be seated. To her left was another savory selection of elite fare options awakened her hunger. "Please, have a seat anywhere. I'm glad your schedule allowed us to meet," Daejun said warmly. Alexis sat down. "Thank you, sir. Excuse my casualness. I had an impromptu commitment and just returned to the office," Daejun explained. Alexis smiled lightly. "It's okay, sir. There's no need to explain." The pair sat opposite one another. Neither said a word. Alexis found the silence deafening. As for Daejun, the pregnant pause was all part of his plans. He sat there studying Alexis, waiting to see how long it would take before she became uncomfortable enough to speak up. To his surprise, she didn't. They sat for 5 minutes before Daejun spoke up. "I hope the last few days were okay for you." Alexis nodded. "Yes, the days were interesting. They passed quickly." Daejun waited for more interaction from Alexis. He assumed she wasn't comfortable with him just yet. "Have you had dinner?" He already knew the answer. Alexis just shook her head. No. Daejun was getting frustrated with her lack of interaction. He'd witnessed how animated she can be. Why is today so different? Alexis sat still. Her face was relaxed, and she appeared to be deep in thought. The idea that Alexis might be having second thoughts hit him hard. "Ms. Lane, you seem quieter than usual. Do you need more time, or do you have second thoughts?" Daejun forced an unimposing smile. How much longer would this drag out, he thought. "You know you want this," Daejun thought to himself. "All women do." He had to stop himself from smiling. "Well," Alexis began, "I have a concern, and I think I'll have to pass on your offer, sir." Daejun's face showed shock. He never doubted that she would accept his offer. Instead, he hears that she's turning him down. "Excuse me," he said a little too abruptly. "You're turning my proposal down?" Yes, I think I am." Alexis blinked. "I must admit, I am a little surprised," Daejun exclaimed. Alexis smiled that warm smile. "I should get going, sir. It looks like you have plans," she said as she looked at the food bar. "I don't want to ruin your plans tonight." "Thank you for your kindness for even considering my situation and my feelings." Exhaling audibly, Alexis looked down at her lap. She couldn't bring herself to look the director in the face. Somewhere between the elevator ride up and the moment she saw him looking like boyfriend material, Alexis lost her nerve. And then it dawned on her. This man is someone's boyfriend for sure. The rumors she'd heard in passing. Judging by the way he's dressed now, either has someone he wants to see or has already spent time with them. When Alexis looked up to meet Daejun, a profound sadness passed across her face. chewing at her bottom lip as if she's still contemplating her decision. She smiled and simply said, "Thank you again. Really, maybe in another life." She stopped herself in mid-sentence. Alexis got up and walked out. Dae-jun sat stunned. Not one woman has ever turned him down for anything, any reason. He sat motionless. His brain was desperately trying to replay what the brief meeting was that they just had. Dae-jun wondered what he did wrong. "No, this is a game she's playing. I get it. She'll come back in a few seconds. I bet she's waiting around the corner," he assured himself. "Ms. Lane, you are good. But I'm better. I can wait." So, Dae-jun sat, waiting, and after 10 minutes of waiting, he stood and checked the door, and then the hallway. And soon he found himself in the elevator heading to the 16th floor. When the doors opened, Dae-jun practically ran out of the elevator. He walked hurriedly down the hall towards the R&D suites. The primary lights were off, and the after-hours lighting was on, which gave a softer glow across the floor. Dae-jun expected to see Alexis bidding her time, feet kicked up on her desk, waiting just long enough before she'd return upstairs. Or so he imagined. At this point, he was practically seething with anger. Before he realized what he was doing, he'd swung the glass door open, only to see Alexis' side profile. She was sitting at her desk, staring at her phone. Just as he assumed, she was trying to outweight him. He had the advantage. It was clear she didn't know he was in the room. He would surprise her. He couldn't wait to hear her excuses. Dae-jun walked stealthily towards Alexis, and as he was merely steps away, she raised her hand and wiped away tears. She sniffed lightly and then exhaled. Dae-jun stopped in his tracks. His anger turned to worry in an instant. Why was she crying? What happened? Dae-jun cleared his throat just loud enough to alert her that he was there. Alexis flinched slightly. She hadn't intended on running into anyone, as she was sure he'd left by now. Alexis began to speak, but her throat was tight. She couldn't get a word out without feeling as if doing so would cause her to cry harder. Alexis looked up at Dae-jun. Tears rolled down her face, landing on her cell phone. The screen was lit and the message was open. "Ms. Lane," Dae-jun said softly. "Are you okay?" Again. Alexis tried to speak but couldn't. She just shook her head and looked down at the phone's screen. Dae-jun knelt beside Alexis. He reached out to her and held her face. He didn't say anything more. He just wiped away her tears, but they started coming faster. He slowly pulled her into him, and he held her, and she cried. It was only when Alexis had spent most of her energy did she tried to release herself from Dae-jun's embrace. Alexis attempted to pull away, but Dae-jun wouldn't let go. Finally, Alexis was able to speak. "I am okay, sir." "You don't feel okay, Ms. Lane." Alexis realized that her body was tensed. "I need you to breathe," he said. "I think I am, sir." She giggled a little, and her shoulders began to lower, and then she released her hands. They'd been balled into fists. "I think I'm okay now," she repeated. Dae-jun released his hold and wiped what remaining tears from her face. Looking into her eyes, he could feel himself slipping into her being. As he knelt in front of Alexis, all Dae-jun could think about was holding her again. His body wanted to be next to hers. It wasn't sexual. It was comfort. He found in that brief moment that he could provide security for someone and that she genuinely received him without wanting anything in return. He wanted to embrace her again, but he did nothing more except wait for Alexis to tell him what she needed. That night, Dae-jun lay in bed wide awake, replaying the previous 24 hours. Dae-jun convinced Alexis to allow him to take her home. She was very hesitant to have him accompany her. He told her that he was worried, that he only wanted to ensure she arrived home safely. And it was true. He didn't want her on the subway or bus falling apart, alone, without anyone to comfort her. He couldn't shake the image of her crying at her desk. The display of emotion unfolded beneath soft glow of the desk task light. Daejun replayed the scene again and again, trying to figure out what he'd missed. Was it something he said earlier that evening? It couldn't be conflict between them. It had to have been personal. Maybe there was an issue with her family. By now it was 12:30 a.m. He checked his phone. There were several messages. None were from people he wanted to hear from. Maybe I should call her, just to check in, to ensure she's okay. He thought to himself. No, I can't do that. It's late, it's not appropriate. Daejun had convinced Alexis to give him her number. Again, she was reluctant to do so. Given her weakened resolve, she didn't protest for too long. It was evident that she was emotionally spent. I don't want to cause problems for your home, sir. Daejun didn't understand the statement. It was only him at home. Why would there be problems? He said to the ceiling. It was now 1:15 a.m., and Daejun was no closer to sleep than the last time he'd checked his phone. He wasn't sure what he expected. To see a text from her. Another thought occurred. He wouldn't see a text from her. The number exchange had been one-sided. She never asked for his number in return. His brow furrowed slightly. She said she'd let him know if she needed anything. But how could she? She never took his personal number. Maybe she emailed him at his work email. Daejun sat up, turned on the lamp nearest his side of the bed, and unlocked his iPad. A few seconds later, he was scrolling through work emails. He even checked his spam folder. Nothing from Alexis Lane. Daejun sat there in mix of emotions. All scenarios in his head lead to her reaching out to him, her needing him, her desire to be with him. Many women, friends and strangers, would have leapt at the opportunity to get his private line. But the truth was the truth. Alexis cared less, and it drove him crazy. By 1:45 a.m., Daejun's fingers hovered over the call button. He had to get some sleep. He knew he couldn't until he heard her voice. Alexis picked up on the third ring. Her voice was heavy and sultry. The sound of her voice completely threw Daejun off his rehearsed script. Hello. A pause. Daejun looked at the contact's name. G. Michael. Another hello. Can you hear me? She sounded even more breathless than the first hello. Call me back when you figure out what you want to say. Alexis paused for a moment. Sleep well. She hung up. Daejun stared at the phone's screen. Did she know it was him? He questioned. He slid back down onto his pillows. Sleep well, Ms. Lane, he whispered. Daejun didn't remember falling asleep. He woke up with his phone still in his hand. He hadn't placed it on its charging station. Usually he is more regimented about those things. Daejun, used to running on very little sleep, immediately got out of bed and started his routine. Work out in his downstairs gym. Breakfast, shower, check his schedule while trying to pull together an outfit and off the office or a meeting elsewhere. Today was an off-site day. He'd meet with Amir Yol from the Jakarta group. They'd discuss partnership possibilities to expand into other ventures. The meeting went better than expected. Daejun accepted several more smaller meetings and ultimately, he'd arrive in the office closer to 2 p.m. He'd taken the elevator straight to the 24th floor. He'd made it a point to check his email, as well as check in with Executive Secretary Choi. At some point, Secretary Choi was able to answer all of the questions he'd dared to ask. His last inquiry had to do with the status of the Campus Connect project. Secretary Choi debriefed Daejun before he could request a last-minute meeting. The secretary informed him that none of the members were able to meet this evening, so he had a free schedule for the remainder of the day. Always grateful for time given back to his personal schedule, he couldn't help but wonder what happened to his team. Secretary Choi shared with him that they were out doing field research. Satisfied with that news, Daejun returned to his office to strategize. Field research was the perfect cover he needed to get Alexis alone. This time, he'd persuade Alexis to date him. Shortly before 5 p.m., the group returned from several local college visits. The three were dressed casually to blend in more with the campus community. Hanjia, Park Ha-jun and Alexis returned to the office in jubilant spirits. The trio definitely looked like carefree college students. Shortly after their arrival, Executive Secretary Choi sent an email asking the group to come to the director's office for a debrief of today's findings. By 5:15, the team ascended to the 24th floor. When the door to the suite lay slightly ajar, Park Ha-jun was the first to enter the office. Alexis and Jia followed. Daejun's eyes immediately landed on Alexis. She was gorgeous. Her hair was down from the usual pulled-back updo. Her outfit was a two-piece skirt set. Her shirt was cropped with enough mid-drift visible that you could see her belly ring at the right angle. It was a butterfly. The team seemed relaxed. They shared what they'd learned, and though they didn't have enough time to debrief amongst themselves, they seemed confident that they would be able to pull together viable data. Daejun was pleased to hear that their research was a success. Honestly, all he wanted was to speak privately with Alexis. He sat observing the group, the way they interacted with one another, and he swore to himself that Park Ha-jun and Alexis seemed closer than usual, though he couldn't be sure if these developments were new or that they'd always behaved this way. Daejun watched as Park Ha-jun turned his complete attention to Alexis. His knees were facing her when she spoke, and he often made eye contact with her. And then there was that goofy-ass smile that was starting to annoy Daejun. Oh yay, this guy is attracted to Alexis. Daejun felt himself becoming annoyed at the idea that Park Ha-jun had an interest in Alexis. Daejun patiently waited for the team to wrap up the debrief, and as they were excusing themselves, Daejun asked Alexis to stay. Ms. Lane, it sounds like today was a good day for the team. For you. Yes. Alexis smiled. We had a really positive focus groups at each campus. I am excited to see the data as it comes in from the application users. Their feedback will be key for our next steps. Yeah. Daejun was impatient. He didn't care about work at that moment. But before he could continue with his questions, Alexis interrupted him. Sir, I want to say thank you. I appreciate that you tried to comfort me last night. She'd been looking away from Daejun. I want to say that I am sorry if I scared you. Maybe scared isn't the right word. Alexis sighed, and then she looked Daejun in his face. I am sorry if I startled you. Daejun listened. He was relieved that she said something first, and then Alexis took a deep inhale, like she was summoning all of the courage needed. Director Sheng, can I ask a question? She waited for his response before moving on to her question. Do you have a girlfriend? The question caught Daejun off guard. No, I don't. Daejun responded, then Alexis followed up. Are you dating someone? Not casual. I mean, are you exclusively, actively dating someone? No, I am not, Daejun replied, not sure where the line of questions was going. There's gossip around the office that you and a socialite are in a relationship. Is that not true? No, it isn't true. Ms. Lane, you must know that I have an active social life. Yes, I have female acquaintances that I spend time with here and there. None of them can claim that I am their boyfriend, fiancé, or anything other than someone they can connect with from time to time. Does that make things clearer for you, Ms. Lane? Can you tell me what this is about? Daejun was genuinely confused, and then Alexis said it. Director, if your offer still stands, would you be my George Michaels? God, it sounds so cringy saying it to someone other than Courtney. Alexis almost felt ashamed, but the pain from the message she received the night before outweighed her ego. Alexis felt lost. All she wanted was to feel something other than disappointment and betrayal. Daejun's surprise was evident. I know this is out of the blue, and I hope you haven't reconsidered your offer. What's changed, Ms. Lane? Daejun said as gently as possible. Barely above a whisper, Alexis said, because it's time. Daejun got the feeling that Alexis was not as ready, but she'd opened the door and he must step through to the other side. There was no room for doubt. Daejun moved from his desk to the couch, and he brought Alexis with him. Ms. Lane, I sense that you are having a hard time with this decision. And honestly, I thought the idea was unorthodox, but I've thought about it, and I think I understand your stance. Thank you, sir, for saying that, Alexis replied. I don't want long-term relationship, but I do want to feel protected when we are together. Alexis played with the hem of her skirt. Also, I know you don't love me, like I don't love you, but when we are sharing time together, I want to have the boyfriend experience, she declared. Only that kind of intimacy when we are together. I won't post videos and pictures of us. I won't make declarations that we are an item. I will not approach you at work in that way. This is sacred space. We are always professionals, period. I respect your position. You are the director. You are our leadership. And even though us doing this seems risky for Engine's reputation, I trust that you will always uphold the company first. Daejun just listened. Also, there has to be respect behind closed doors, and if we are ever in public together, I trust you to always protect my integrity. Alexis's eyes met Daejun's. I want to ask if you understand what comes with my goal to have the boyfriend experience? Daejun's brows furrowed. I think you know that I lack sexual experience. Alexis kept playing with the hem of her skirt. Daejun interrupted. Have you dated? Have you ever had a boyfriend? Or girlfriend, perhaps? Alexis nodded. Yes. I dated for almost a year, but we were never intimate. Daejun didn't have an opinion about it, and he didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. If we decide to go forward, you will be my first sexual experience. If you don't mind that, if you can, be patient and gentle with me, like you would with someone you love. That's all I ask. When I look back on that moment, I don't want to have bad memories of my first time. If you think you can do that for me, let's make this official. So now, the terms are set. Nothing dramatic happened. No lines were crossed. And yet, everything feels different. So before we go any further, I want to know. 1. If this were a romance novel, would you be rooting for them? Or yelling at the page? 2. Be honest. Who do you think is more nervous right now, Alexis or Director John? 3. Is this the beginning of something exciting, or the start of a beautiful disaster? 4. And if you were Alexis's best friend, would you support this, or stage an intervention? If the terms of want pulled you in, go ahead, like, comment, share, and subscribe, because temptation doesn't stop here.